Madison.
Hi, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
I'm doing well. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about publishing, which is so scary. So it's very exciting, but this is a pretty touchy topic. So we are going to talk about publishing in graduate school, and we will be sitting down with a really close personal friend of mine, Dr. Christopher Bay, who is a full professor at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. He specializes in paleoanthropology in Eastern Asia, but he takes a multidisciplinary approach to his research and spends a lot of time collaborating with paleoanthropologists, archaeologists, and geneticists. And this is definitely reflected in his incredibly impressive publication record. I actually was looking at his CV the other day, and I think it's about 2 miles long. I feel like if we printed it, we would probably run out of paper and ink before we even get halfway through. But he has published in many journals, including but not limited to Science, Nature, Ecology and Evolution, Nature Communications, Scientific Reports, Evolutionary Anthropology, the Journal of Human Evolution, the American Journal of Biological Anthropology, also known as the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. And he also has a book, if you can believe it, The Paleoanthropology of Eastern Asia, which was published by the University of Hawaii Press. So very, very impressive publication record. And he's here to talk to us today.
Sounds great. What an incredibly long list of publications.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. I know you are like the publishing guru, so we're super excited to have you on the show today to talk about publishing in graduate school, which is terrifying. It's exciting, but it's a very scary topic for many. So, just to dive right in with our questions, when is the ideal time for students, whether they're doing their undergraduate degree or even a graduate degree, to begin thinking about publishing?
It's actually a really good question. Depending on the university setup, where the students are at, I would say, there are undergraduate publications, so undergraduate journals that are basically campus centered. So if undergraduate students are doing undergraduate research, they might be able to get their first publication in a journal like that. So that would be, a first step as an undergraduate student. Graduate students, probably not going to look at a venue like that, but a more regular standard venue. But really, it's just a matter. It's up to the student about when they want to think about trying to get their stuff published, right? One of the problems with undergraduate and graduate students is if you don't collect primary data, you're basically doing library research, then it's much more difficult to get your first publication out there if you're basically just doing a lit review, right? So that makes it a little more complicated. So what I usually recommend to my students is for them to really get to know a professor and become involved with their project, and then from there you can get an extension, expand on it, develop a side project where the student, whether it's a graduate student or undergraduate student, can start thinking about publishing it, right? So I'm working with an undergraduate student right now, who's working on an honors thesis, and she's going to graduate in December. And we're already talking about her submitting an abstract to the AABAs for Denver for next year. So we'll see how the thesis goes and how it goes along. But the idea though for her is, I'm trying to set her up to be able to go to graduate school and to be able to go to the graduate program that she wants to really go to. So these are things that we work with students very closely with.
That's a great point about getting prepared in undergraduate years as well, in terms of preparing yourself for graduate school. So our next question is about do students need to wait until they have original research to publish, or are there other types of publishable contributions that they can make in the meantime?
Another good question. I would say that most graduate students, their first publications are usually book reviews, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it's actually a good experience for them. So for example, like if you guys wanted to read my book, you can just, talk to the publisher, request it, and then tell them that you want to write a book review someplace. So the advantage of that is most graduate students, are not rich, right? And so you can get a free book this way, by doing this. So, but you also get a publication out of it as well, which is a good way of doing this. If you don't have your own actual data, so you can get a couple publications out and you can learn the process that way.
So are you giving us like official permission to read your book and then write about it? Can we go to our social media accounts and talk about your book?
By all means.
That's awesome. I actually didn't know you could get a free book out of doing book reviews. I had a professor a long time ago tell me that like the gateway into publishing was to do a book review. And it sounded so scary at the time. But I mean, if it's a way to fill up a bookshelf for free, might
You
be something
know,
you want to consider.
it's one of those hidden secrets that professors don't usually tell students. But if you're willing and able to write a book review, you can request from the publisher a copy of the book, or if it's a journal like AJBA, the book review editor, you can usually contact. They'll have a list on their publication website. They'll probably have a list of books that are available for review, and you can just go there and click, and then contact the book review editor and say you would like to write a book review there. And then if they haven't found anybody, that they want to send this book to, then in all likelihood they'll probably let you review the book, and then you'll get a free copy of the book that way. And you 9 times out of 10 you can keep the book, so it's a good way to fill out your bookshelf that way. But you actually have to do right. You actually do have to write the book review, though. You
If
can't
it
just
falls
request 10
through.
books and never write anything.
Well, maybe they won't find you. Amazing. Well, that's why we're here, is we're here to learn all the secrets. So my next question about secrets that professors don't want us to know is the infamous publish or perish. I know we've all heard that so many times. It's absolutely terrifying. Is that a myth, or is that something that is a true thing in academia?
It's actually still true. It was probably much more difficult in the past. But it is still very true. I serve on a lot of search committees. Obviously I was the chair of the human biology search committee. We just made a hire in my department there. We do look at their track records, of the applicants, are they publishing? And so publish or perish is still something that is important. We will be looking for a steady stream of publications, especially in a field like ours, biological anthropology, broadly speaking, right, is really important that you have a steady stream of journal articles, because we normally don't sit down and write a book, right? We will occasionally write a book, right? It may take 5 or 10 years to actually write that book, but we're really looking for a couple of publications a year, right? And so as a graduate student, you could either get some of those publications by riding on the coattails of your advisor and being involved with different research programs and projects and stuff. But if you've got your own data, you start spinning out your own papers, that especially that are first authored, will really help you in the long run. So, there is, people do look at your publication record and your steady stream. If you have a 2025 PhD and your first publication is in 2015, and then you have nothing between 2015 and 2025, it's going to raise a lot of questions, right? But if you have a 2025 PhD and you started publishing in 2022 and you've got a steady stream of publications there, it says that it suggests to the review committee that you have an active research project or active research projects, and you are very, very active in the field, and you understand what it takes to actually get these publications out the door. So publish or perish, yeah, I would say that still there's still some validity to that, and it's important, especially as you guys are coming up through the ranks and stuff, and starting to get published yourself. It's really important, and you guys are eventually going to hit the job market. So you really need to be able to show that steady stream.
So the real key is making sure you've got active projects and that you're writing in the meantime. So speaking in kind of like the same vein, we have a question about collaboration. So how can students respectfully and effectively reach out to mentors or peers about helping out with publications? And what do you think some of the benefits are and some of the challenges are with collaborating with others on manuscripts?
That's it's I work with a lot. I've got, I don't know, a number of publications, but the vast majority of my publications are co-authored. And I work with a lot of students, on various publications and stuff. And so it's really, and I get emails from students that are not in Hawaii that want to work with me and stuff. Courtney is a good example. And so it's very interesting. I will say though that when you actually do meet for the first time, you need to be able to set up basically get a good idea as to what you want the student to work on, and try to get an idea as to what they actually can do. Because I have accepted students that I would say, can you do isotopes, and they would say yes, and then you put them in the lab and it turns out that they can't do it, right? So it's one of those that it's really a weeding out process and a learning process, right? So, I tend to be a little more conservative when I start working with somebody that I don't know anything about. So it's something that to keep in mind. I would recommend to students to probably first talk to your own professors. That because you've probably taken classes from them, so they probably know who you are a little bit. And I will say that when I was an undergraduate student, that's how I got started. I did my undergraduate degree at SUNY Stony Brook, and it had one of the better anthropology programs in the country at the time. Still does. But the intro classes had like 150, 200 students in them. So professors not going to know an undergraduate student from a hole in the wall, right? So I had to actually go out of my way to introduce myself to the professors, right? And this is really the professors. One of the things that you realize is they actually don't mind when students come out and reach out to them, and the students tells them that they want to work in their lab and stuff. And so I started working in a lab when I was an undergraduate student. I did a couple of years that way, and that actually helped me get the experience to go to graduate school and so on and so forth, right? So I would say probably if you know somebody out in the field, students can feel free to reach out to them directly. But one of the first things that I do when students reach out to me, I probably said this to Courtney as well: send me your CV, right? So, because I don't know anything about you, right? And so it's just somebody emailing me out of the blue and stuff, and then maybe we'll set up a meeting, after I try to get a better idea as to what they're really interested in, what they really want to get out of this and stuff. But probably the easiest route for most students that are going to be listening to this discussion, this meeting, is probably to really think about going up and talking to your professors there. And probably what got you interested in anthropology is something that they talked about in the classroom. And it might be a very good possibility for you to become involved with something that they're working on, and it's just a lot easier that way. But of course, if there's something like in Asian paleoanthropology, most programs are not going to have somebody that specializes in that, right? So in cases like that, I get a lot of people reaching out to me because of what's going on in Asian paleo right now.
So our next question is offering some advice. So publishing can often feel like a long, really uncertain process, and sometimes a pretty stressful process. So what practical advice can you offer students who might feel a little discouraged or overwhelmed?
I would say when you're just starting out, to prepare for rejection. It happens to all of us. I get rejected all the time. I've got, I may have more than 150 publications right now, and I think I published about 10 papers last year. But my acceptance rate is probably about 50%, which says what? I've got about 10 papers that got rejected last year. So, I'm used to it. But, when you're just starting out, it's very, very difficult, to accept. And especially if the reviewers know that this is a graduate student submitting this paper, sometimes they can be very, very harsh in very, uh, inappropriate ways, right? Unprofessional ways. We always talk about reviewer two, right? And we've all seen them, those reviews, right? So I would say just be prepared. You really need to develop a thick skin. If this is your plan that you want to be able to publish, in the field and stuff, you just need to be prepared to face rejection because it's going to happen. It happens to the best of us. It happens to the worst of us. Nobody has 100% acceptance rate, right? So, and a good example of this is one of my early publications is actually one of my most highly cited paper. And I think it was rejected 3 times from 3 different journals before it was finally accepted. And my colleague and I said, you know what, this is actually good material. It's got primary data, and we're just going to keep submitting this someplace until something catches, right? Something finally caught, and people are still citing it today. So it's one of those things that you just need to have perseverance and a thick skin, and accept the fact that if a reviewer knows that you're a graduate student and they're having a bad day, they may write some really nasty comments, and some of you guys may have to face that and stuff. But in those cases, though, what I usually recommend is you talk to either your more senior collaborators if they're on co-authors on the paper, or you talk to your advisor, about how to deal with this, because sometimes the reviews are so way out there that even the editor will say that you can disregard this and that comment because it doesn't make any sense, right? So, we published a paper a couple of years ago in evolutionary anthropology where, half the reviewers said this paper should be published. And then the other half of the reviewers said the paper should not be published. But, their reviews really read like an op-ed, and so they didn't have any, fundamental problems with the actual analysis, right? It's just they disagreed with the interpretation. So, the editor said, you can pretty much disregard that, those comments because they don't really make any sense in this context. So, that's where, it would really help for you to talk to more senior people in the field that have experienced this, about best ways forward.
So, what other resources might there be for students who are just looking for a little bit of additional support when it comes to publishing?
It's interesting because I was invited to a similar panel discussion at the AABAs in Baltimore to talk about publishing in the field. And I think I would recommend to students that are thinking about publishing for the first time to attend these types of webinars and panel discussions because they're very, very helpful. You guys mentioned it, I think, already in this meeting, but publishing for the first time can be very, very intimidating, right? Especially if you're trying to publish like maybe off your master's thesis and you've been collecting data, but you don't really know how to organize it and stuff. So really just talking to more senior people in the field is usually helpful. You find somebody that you can relate to and that you can trust. And that I think is going to be a really big help for the students.